Welcome back to Crumbs and Corkscrews. This is the channel where I aim to help you on your baking adventures. I'm Lou, I'm the dessert obsessed baker, and if you're here with me tonight, either on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel, thanks for tuning in. We're going to get started in just a moment. As you can see, the countdown's over there. So whilst you're waiting, if you're there or if you're on replay, say hello in the comments below and let me know where you're joining from. Now, this channel is for everybody, whether you're a baking beginner or a pro. You're out there rivaling Dame Mary Berry. I've got so many different ideas, easy, deliciously easy treats, bakes, no bakes, all sorts of things. So whether you are looking for something new or looking to brush up on your basics, there's loads for you here. And every Wednesday throughout the summer, we are live streaming here from my kitchen in the Cotswolds in the UK. So grab a cuppa or a glass of whatever you fancy, put your feet up, and we're going to be doing some live baking in about 40 seconds time. And don't forget, if you enjoy the live stream or wherever you're on, Facebook or YouTube, don't forget you can either hit like or subscribe and the little notification bell, and it will let you know when I post new videos and also when I go live next time. So join us. We have such good fun on a Wednesday evening, and just get stuck in, really. As you can see, tonight's bake is raspberry white chocolate flapjack, and I can't wait to get into these. Flapjack's been really, really requested recently, so excited to get stuck in. As it says, let's go. So yeah, I'm Lou, the dessert obsessed baker, and this evening we're going to be making raspberry and white chocolate flapjack, and we're going to be doing everything here. I'm going to talk you through all the steps, step by step, obviously, and tell you about the ingredients and why I'm using certain ingredients and all bits and pieces, so you can go and make these at home really simply and easily. This is a super simple recipe. So let's take a look. So raspberry white chocolate flapjack, this recipe is going to make about 10 to 12 reasonable sized portions. You might want to cut them smaller, you might want to cut them a little bit bigger. It depends how chunky you like your flapjack, but roughly about 10 to 12 sort of brownie sized pieces. Like I say, it's deliciously easy. We're going to do this all in one bowl. And actually, if you're doing it at home, you can do it in one saucepan, but I'm going to do it in a bowl so you guys can see what I'm doing. And we're going to get that really golden, crispy flapjack edge. And we're going to get that really nice, chewy center there. And we're going to be using golden syrup. But this recipe is really adaptable. So you can make this really easily, either gluten-free or vegan. So you can take what we've got and just substitute things out for the same. And again, it's another really good, simple recipe for getting our little bakers in the kitchen and giving us a hand as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's take a look then at those ingredients and equipment. Now, I haven't pre-weighed my ingredients this evening. Normally I do, but because there's only a few of them and it's actually quite a quick recipe, I'll weigh out as we go along and you'll be able to see the different sorts of quantities that we've got going. So first up, we're going to be using porridge oats, and these are just really actually quite basic supermarket own brand porridge oats. You can use just whatever brand you want really, but rolled oats, big. If you're using the jumbo oats, you probably want to grind them down a little bit in the food processor first. But you can buy just bog standard porridge oats really quite cheaply in the supermarket, in about a kilo bag, and it'll last you a long time. So we'll be using those first. And because porridge oats do tend to be naturally gluten-free, or you do need to check, this is how we can make this recipe quite easily gluten-free, but you can specifically get gluten-free porridge oats. So if in doubt, use those. Both my father-in-law and my sister-in-law are celiac, and we use specifically the gluten-free porridge oats for those. So that's going to form the base of our flapjack. You're then going to need some butter. There's 200 grams here. Yes, there's a lot of butter in this one. This is unsalted. If you want to, you can add a little bit of pinch of salt to it, or you can use a slightly salted butter instead. But I'm just going to stick with unsalted today and not add any additional salt in there because we've got quite a lot of sweet things going on. But you need 200 grams of that. Doesn't matter if this is fridge cold or room temperature for this recipe because we're going to be melting it. You're then going to need some sugar. And you'll see lots of different sugars called for with flapjack recipes. Typically, most people use a white caster sugar, but we're going to use a light brown soft sugar. And this is really nice and moist, and it's going to help keep those flapjacks really chewy and moist in the center rather than drying them out. And because it's the light brown sugar as well, it's going to give us a little bit of that toffee flavor, which is going to mix in really well with the rest of the flavors that we've got. So we're going to need equal quantity of butter, of sugar to butter. So that's 200 grams of that later. If you want to use white caster sugar, it's the same quantity. Next up, for our sweeteners, we're going to be using golden syrups. This is here in the UK. It's a sugar syrup, quite a thick, treacly sort of thing, but not dark like treacle. But you can use like a light corn syrup instead if you can't get golden syrup. This stuff is heaven. It's just sweet tooth addiction. If you don't want to use golden syrup or you can't get hold of it, or you don't want to use a sugar like that, you can also use a runny honey, not a set honey, just a runny honey. I haven't got enough left today, so that's why we're using the golden syrup. And you'd use the same amount of honey as golden syrup. So that's just a light, mild honey. You don't want anything that's too perfumed with the floral scents and things. You can get just a really standard, light, mild, runny honey. So you can use that instead of the golden syrup. And we're going to use about 100 grams of that. So it's about 4 tablespoons, give or take. It's when we start getting that out to put into the saucepan, you'll see how sticky and messy it can get. Next up, you're going to need some fresh raspberries or frozen ones. I have frozen ones today, which I have defrosted. So these will be going in. And I'm going to use some of the juice as well from those. You want about 125 grams there. So that's our raspberries. And then finally, we're going to be using white chocolate drops. And you'll want about 100 grams of those. And that, I think, is a bag. Depends. You don't have to put these in if you don't want to. You can use white chocolate chunks. You can chop white chocolate into chunks or shards and mix in as well. You don't have to add these in at all. But that's our ingredients. So it is really quite simple and quite basic. In terms of equipment then, that's just as simple. We're going to be using pretty much a large mixing bowl, which I shall just grab. I've got another one in there for just posterity. But you want a large mixing bowl to mix everything in. Now, I'll be doing it in the mixing bowl, but actually if you're doing this at home and you want to save on the washing up even further, you can just do everything in a saucepan. If you've got a large saucepan, you can melt the butter and the sugar and the syrup in there and then add your oats and everything into that saucepan. Because I'm doing this on the little induction hob today, I've only got a small saucepan for that. So we'll be melting everything there and then adding everything else into a large mixing bowl. So especially if you're doing it with little ones, get them to deal with the mixing bowl bit. So you'll need a large mixing bowl. Then, of course, you'll need your saucepan. So a large one or a small one, depending on what you're doing, if you're mixing at the bowl or mixing in the saucepan. But you need enough to get your sugar and your butter and your syrup in there. So that's that. You'll also need sort of an angled spatula or palette knife or something to help push your flapjack down when it's in the tin. So you can use the back of a spoon, doesn't have to be anything fancy, or a rubber spatula. Rubber spatula is handy for stirring when we're melting everything and getting everything mixed really well together. And then you're going to need a pan to put your flapjack in. Now, this recipe works really well in an 8-inch square cake tin. I'm going to be using a rectangle tin today. This is 11 by 7, I think. I will double check and I'll pop it in the instructions. But I'm going to use one of those instead. And we're just going to line it with a little bit of baking parchment. That's your ingredients and that's your equipment. For baking info as well, the recipe bakes in a standard oven, a fan oven, or heat top and bottom at 180 degrees C, and that's about 350 Fahrenheit. And we're going to bake it for about 35 minutes. So then I'm going to, let's get rid of those and we'll be able to see what we're doing a bit better. All the information and the full recipe will be on the blog, and I'll pop that all in the comments below as well, and also let you know when it's live. So let's get started then. We're going to melt up our ingredients. So this first step is melting our butter, our sugar, and our golden syrup. So you'll want to grab your saucepan and make sure it's a heavy bottom one, because we're going to be heating this quite a fair bit and we don't want anything to burn. So a decent saucepan is good. And I'm just going to weigh straight into here today. So we talked ingredients wise. Butter first off, 200 grams of unsalted butter. And I'm just going to pop that straight into my pan. It doesn't need to be anything else fancy. There we go. And I'll keep that actually for popping stuff in. Next up, we also then want to add in our sugar. So we want 200 grams of soft light brown sugar. Flapjack is one of those easy recipes that the backbone of a good weekend walk or a good rainy hike on holidays or long car trips is always what flapjack reminds me of. Ian bakes flapjack for his long cycles, and he'll add other bits and pieces in there to help sort of energy wise. We'll talk about that in a little while. So sugar, I was just giving that a stir. Brown sugar, because it's quite moist and soft, can clump together. So normally I just give it a stir or a crunch, like mix up with my spoon, so it's not, we're not putting big lumps in. So we want 200 grams just straight in with our butter. 200 grams there. Now, that myth that flapjack is healthy totally goes out the window when you see how much sugar and everything we're adding in. So it's 200 grams of light, soft brown sugar. I'm just going to flip my notes so I don't forget anything. And then we're going to add the golden syrup. Now, you might be wondering, why are we adding 2 lots of sugar? Well, what happens is the golden syrup and the sugar help everything combined. So the golden syrup will give it its sweetness and make it all that nice soft center. But without the regular sugar, which as it cools binds everything together, it would crumble. So this is why we've got 2 lots of sugar. It's also why it's a good, people use it a lot, like I say, for walking or bits and pieces like that, because it's quite a lot in there for releasing out. So let's just pop the scales to 0. And golden syrup, we want about 100 grams of this. It's about 4 tablespoons. But if you've been using golden syrup before, you know how temperamental this stuff can be. So I'm just going to actually just scoop it through on its own accord. Let's get the lid on. This is one of them things, it gets absolutely everywhere if you don't get it right. What I'm going to do, that is 100 spot on. So that was 2 tablespoons, but they were really big heaped ones. So about 4 tablespoons in total. I'd say I doubled up on those. So get everything off you can do. Keep your spoon because you can use that later. And I'm just going to move the golden syrup out of the way so we don't get covered in stickiness. Next up then, we're going to heat this gently. So I'm going to pop this onto the induction. And let's pop it on. I'm just going to go manual. I don't want this to burn. I don't want it to boil. I'm not making caramel. I just want it all to melt together. So we're going on a low heat there. And just let that do its thing. So whilst that's heating through, we're going to line our baking tray for the moment. So let's get some greaseproof. And the easiest way for lining this is just the same as we've done with brownies and our Rocky Road that we did the other week. I'm trying to remember what we did. Whereas we're going to create a length one way and then the other way. So we stitch 2 in here and then we'll peg it together. So let's go up like that. That will sit in here. And then I'm going to sit another the other way. Let's just pop that back in there. Now, if you want to, you can use a little bit of cake release to help your baking parchment sit in the tray. One thing that I reminded myself, I was watching Gemma Stafford's Bigger Bolder Baking the other day, and I totally remembered. She said something about my granny used to do that she mentioned, and I completely forgot about it and thought, why am I not doing that? So save your butter wrappers with any of the butter on the inside, and just for quick things like this, you can use that butter wrapper and the last bits of the butter on there to grease round the pan, and then that's ready for recycling. That's done. And the thing is, you can keep those butter wrappers in the fridge until you need them. So I'm just check in on this. I can see it's melting down quite nicely. So I'm just going to give it a stir. Remember, if you are doing this with little ones, I keep seeing people on their videos with their pan hands sticking over the side of the work surface. Always remember, pan hand in and out the way. So I'm just going to turn that around like that and pop that there so it's close. So let's just pop our baking parchment in. I'm going to actually put my wider piece down first. Like that. And then put my larger piece in. And what I'm also going to do, and I remembered them and haven't got them out of the cupboard, is my clothes pegs. So just peg over the ends just to help holding everything on like so. And having these overlaps means that when the flapjack is completely cool, you can lift it out the pan really easily. So there we go. It's a little bit easier on a square pan, I must admit. One that doesn't have a lip. There we go. Anyway, so that's our pan ready to go. So I'm just going to pop that to one side for the moment. And then let's have a look at this. So as you can see, it's melting through. And we're just melting everything together. Remember, we're not boiling it. We're not making a caramel. We don't want it to burn or anything like that. We just want to get a really nice, thick, sugary, buttery mixture. So that's still going. What we'll do whilst that's still going is we will measure out our dry ingredients. So we're going to take our large bowl this time and our scales and set it to 0. Let's get rid of those. And in here then we're going to add our porridge oats to start with. I've got golden syrup everywhere now. My fingers are really sticky. Oh, right. So porridge oats here, then we want 400 grams of these. I say if you're using jumbo oats, you'll want to blitz these just very quickly, pulse them in the food processor because they're a bit too big and they won't hold together. It'll all fall apart. Some people also suggest that if you are doing it like this, is to actually blitz about a quarter of your porridge oats into more of a flour because it will help bind everything together. I haven't found that it makes any difference, so I just do mine, as we say, the deliciously easy way and leave them as it is. So that's those there. We are going to add in then our white chocolate chunks, and I want to save some of these for towards the end to scatter on the top. So I'm going to just open and scatter a few of those in. So let's go 50 grams. There we go. And we've got some left over. I need a clean spatula, and we'll just mix those through there. Now, like Ian does, what you can do here, if you want to, is you can add things like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, all different types of seeds if you want to. You can add dried fruit, so dried cranberries or raisins or sultanas, things like that. Whatever you fancy, really. So we're just going to do that. This is how super simple this is, and we're just going to leave that then because we're going to be adding the rest of our ingredients to that. Let's just pop that there and give this a stir through. Now you'll notice I haven't let it get really hot. I haven't let it boil. I've just let it get to a melting point. I'm actually just going to pop it up a fraction before we go any further and just give it a mix. So what you can do with the raspberries then is you can either put them in whole, or we're actually going to take half of those and we're going to mash them up so we sort of get a raspberry layer on the middle. And we'll do that in a moment. I just don't want to take my eyes off of this sugar and butter and syrup mixture. That's looking good. So I'm just going to pop that down a temperature again. Let's pop that to one side and let's mash up these raspberries just quickly. So in another bowl, these are my raspberries. Now these were frozen because I couldn't get hold of any fresh ones this week's shopping. So we've gone with frozen, but I've defrosted them. Oh, they smell great. I love raspberries. One of my favorite. And in here we're asking for about 125 grams of raspberries for this recipe. So if you take about 70 grams of your raspberries, I've got a fork because I've used the spoon typically. This is Wednesday night, watch Louise struggle night. So I'm going to leave those there for the moment. We're going to pick them back up in a moment. But I'm just going to pop them there. And then with your fork, just mash them through. Actually, I might add a little bit more. Where's that spoon? Let's get a clean one. So long as you've got a few raspberries to pop on the top, you'll be fine. So mash those. The thing with the frozen raspberries is these are easier to mash because obviously they've defrosted, so they're a little bit wetter. Let's get rid of the scales. So raspberries, oats and white chocolate. White chocolate left to go. We're going to pop a dash of vanilla in here, and let's just give this a final stir. I think that's good. So we're going to turn that heat off and finish that there. Right, so we're good to go with the next bit. When you're adding your oats into the wet, it can get quite hard to mix in the saucepan as well. Hence why I also like doing it in a large bowl, because you can get in there and give it a really good mix. But for this, what you want to do is try and make a well in the center, because we're going to pour this straight in there. So that's our butter, our sugar, and our golden syrup. It smells amazing because that chocolate. I really wish Canon would be able to do something about that. So we've just poured in our butter, our melted butter, sugar, and golden syrup mixture into our oats and our white chocolate. We're going to add a little splash of vanilla extract. This is entirely optional. It's up to you if you want to do this. And that's half a teaspoon. So I'm adding a teaspoon into there. And that's the homemade extract that we've made before. And then just with a spatula, I'm just going to bring everything together. Now, some people say, oh, don't do this because the heat will melt the chocolate. And it can do. That's why we're using actually chocolate chunks. They're a little bit more stable. But you know what? If you get melted pockets of chocolate in there, or you can freeze them before you do. So you want to, like when you're making a cake mixture and you make sure you've got all the dry ingredients out the bottom of the bowl, we want to do that here with our flapjack as well. Make sure it's all coated. It smells really, really good. Right. So next up, we're going to pop this into our cake tin. But first off, I'm going to preheat the oven. I'm just going to move that out of the way now. So for your oven, you want to preheat it to 180 degrees or 350 Fahrenheit. So, and I don't know why I'm shouting, because I've now got the walkable mic, so you can hear me properly even when I'm over here. So 180, preheat. Simple, really, isn't it? So into our baking tray, then we're going to go with our mixture. So for this bit, then you want your mixture, you want your mashed raspberries, and your lined baking tray. So pour in half of the mix. That looks about half. Just go in with another little bit there. There we are. Just put that to there. And then Actually, we want the spatula. Your spatula or the back of a spoon or something, just push it down. This is like when we did the rocky road the other week, when you needed to make sure it was really well compacted down, because if it's not, when it sets and it's baked, it'll just fall apart because it's not holding itself together, and we've got great big gaps in there. So use something quite sturdy to start with and push it out and try and get an even layer right up to those edges. There we go. Flapjack is certainly not healthy. It smells so buttery and so sugary and just So we're going to put the rest in afterwards, but we're going to first off put this layer of raspberries that we've got, that we've mashed up. So put that in. Now, trust me, this is normally very easy on the washing up. It's just that I'm making quite a lot tonight because I'm doing various bits and pieces. But take your raspberries. I'm using an angled spatula palette knife here at the moment, just because it's easier. Now, we've talked about these before. Once I've just done this, I shall show you why I love this again. Actually, you can see, because when I'm doing this, I'm not having to get my hand inside the tin as I'm baking, as I'm moving it around, because it's got that crank on it. And you see, if I put my hand there, you can see the crank. And that crank means that when I'm my hand is sat higher than the palette knife itself. So it just means I'm not dragging my fingers through anything. It just helps you really smooth out. So I do highly recommend one if you want to, if you're looking for something simple to add to your baking equipment list. I can't do it. My brain is a long good week. Right. It's not as warm. Over 30 degrees in here. It was crazy, which is why we postponed to Sunday, and we did the Cadbury's chocolate finger, like dairy milk cheesecake, which I took pictures of yesterday, and just currently writing that up. It tastes amazing and it looks really fantastic as well. So you can find that on the channel or on the Facebook page, and you can find out all the hints and tips for making the best no-bake chocolate cheesecake. So I've just added those, the rest of the flapjack on top of our raspberries, and I'm now just gonna spread that back out a bit. Like I've used a spoon this time instead of the spatula, just because I think, because I've got that raspberry layer, I need a little bit more control here, because I don't want to spread it out and my raspberries spurt out the side. Oh, it sounded a little bit local then. Spurt. And if the raspberries bubble up through the top, that's not a problem. It gives you that really nice fruity jamminess as well. So let's just keep pushing out. And then get everything it does smell amazing. You don't need, when you get stuck into this, you don't need a lot of it because of all that sugar and everything in there. I'm just going to spread a little bit out over this way. Whereas we're going to have a really raspberry corner there. Let's see if there's anything left in there. The light's going now as well. I think I'm still okay. We've had to as you know, over the last couple of weeks with the weather, which has been amazing, the sun into this kitchen is just beautiful in the evening, but it's just right in my line of sight when we do this. So we don't have any blinds in here at our patio doors, but we've had the heat has killed the fridge freezer, so the new fridge freezer arrived today. So I have the box from the fridge freezer opened out as a blind across the patio windows. Oh dear. Right. The things you do to sort of improvise. So this is our flapjack, and as you saw, I've smoothed it over with the spoon. And I'm going to add not all these chocolate bits, but I'm just going to push a little few in. Do you know what actually would be really nice is the caramel milk. The caramel, that was what it was, wasn't it? That we had the other week that I used in the Biscoff Rocky Road. That would be really nice. That caramelized white chocolate with the raspberries and the flapjack. So you get all that toffee flavor, all sorts of things there. That my mouth is watering thinking about that. Let's just push those in a little bit. And don't forget, this isn't going to rise because it's got flour in it. What's going to happen is any rising or puffy up bits will be because of the sugars and everything in the flapjack as it bakes. That's just pushing everything up. So I'm just going to pop a few more on there. And then let's pop those back in there because then we can see what we've got within the raspberries. I'm not quite sure what we've got left, but let's have a look. These are my pudding with some Greek yogurt, I think. So I've got a few. I'm just going to push those in. This is a bit like when we did the raspberry Oreo brownies the other week. Just push them into the top. Don't forget that the raspberries will, then the jam will bubble up through, not the jam, the crushed raspberries layer will bubble up through, but I'm just pushing these in to the top there. Told you this was a quick one. It smells so good. I can't wait actually to get stuck into this. I love flapjack. There's something about flapjack that reminds me of being a kid, and it's those weekend walks or hikes and being in Devon and all sorts. And then also, there was like in the 90s, I'm showing my age now, there was like this resurgence of it. Flapjack became like one of the, a bit like cupcakes are, one of the fad things. It was all about flapjacks. You used to be able to get like chocolate coated flapjacks and fruity flapjacks and all sorts of things at the school took shop. But yeah, they're not healthy. Excuse me, I'm a little bit of tickle. Right, so this, as you can see then, is ready to go in. So, and the oven is preheated, so it's 180 degrees, 350 Fahrenheit. This is going to go in for about 35 minutes. So we'll pop it in and then I'll tell you a little bit more about when we know it's cooked, what we're looking for when it's cooked, and also just about how we can do a few alternatives with that. So this is going in. And that's in for 35 minutes. So this is really, like I say, it's really actually quite simply that we've made, that was it. It's It's a very quick and easy recipe. But this is going in now for 35 minutes. Now, it depends how you like your flapjack. If you want them like that golden crunchiness on the outside, but still chewy in the middle, oh, excuse me, hiccups, chewy in the middle, then you want to bake them for the 35 minutes. If you prefer them a bit more solid, and when you get that sugary, crunchy, caramelly edges to them, you want to take them in and leave them for an extra 5 minutes. If you're more of a soft flapjack, no crunchiness, just like the nice soft chewiness and it's all just bound together, then take a look at about 30 minutes and they should be done. Don't forget, light brownies, when you take them out of the oven, they're still going to cook a little bit whilst they cool down. And also light brownies, we don't want to take these out of the tin as soon as they're out of the oven because they are still cooking. That sugar is still working to bind everything together. So the best thing with flapjacks, because it's not like a cake where it's going to form an outside crust or we're going to overheat it or overbake it, we can actually leave our flapjacks in the tin to cool completely. And what I tend to do is I tend to leave them in the tin, just cover it with a tea towel and leave them in the tin to cool down overnight. Then the following day, I can cut them up into the pieces, literally just lift it out the tin on that baking parchment and cut it into my slices. So they're in there for the moment. In terms of then what we're talking about with alternatives, this recipe is really easy to make gluten-free or vegan. So we've got no eggs in here for a start off. So there's absolutely no eggs in there at all. We've got no gluten if we're using gluten-free porridge oats. Now porridge oats, like we said, or rolled oats, are typically gluten-free. However, it depends on the manufacturing process. So if you do want to make sure you're making a gluten-free one, double check the packaging of your porridge oats beforehand, but you can buy specifically gluten-free porridge oats. In terms of making it vegan, however, we do have our butter in there. And rather than use a vegan butter, which you can do, or a vegan spread, because they've got high water content in there, it's not the fat that's helping giving that buttery taste because it sort of melts out when you melt your sugar and everything together. So instead, you can use coconut oil, and then that also gives you that really nice, lovely flavor that coconut oil has throughout your flapjack. And then you can maybe think of adding different things into your flapjack if you're doing that version. You could use dried papaya, dried mango, coconut pieces, desiccated coconut in there, all sorts of things would go really nicely with that coconut oil. Remember, if you're using chocolate and you want to make a vegan alternative, you need to make sure that it's a vegan chocolate as well, and any of your add-ins are vegan or plant-based. Gluten-free wise, again, you want to make sure that everything that you add in is gluten-free. So alternatives, you can pretty much do anything. You can take this base recipe and use it without the raspberries and the white chocolate in there. So you can just have a standard flapjack. We used to do with raisins in there, just handfuls of really plump raisins, switch the raspberries and the chocolate chips for raisins. And then once it's baked as well, once it's cooled down, you could melt some chocolate and pour that over the top so you get a really lovely finish on there as well. Other alternatives that you can do, remember the sugar you can switch for honey. So if you're doing a vegan alternative again, not the sugar. The sugar you can change for a light white caster sugar. If you prefer, you don't have to use a brown sugar. It's the golden syrup that we can change for the honey. Now, if you're doing a vegan version, then don't forget you don't want to be using the honey as it's obviously animal. So you can use a golden syrup instead, which is just refined sugar. And very sticky. This is why I put it over there, because I've picked it up now and my hands are the joys of using golden syrup. You can make Any dried fruit goes in there. You can switch out some of, or even add in to your porridge oats, things like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, all of those really good things as well. So you get a little bit more of a healthy balance, and you've got healthy oils from the seeds as well. So that's it, really. I mean, there's not a lot else to tell you about flapjack. It is really that simple. And so that was quick. So that's in the oven doing its thing. I can see everything starts to go this really nice golden color with the sugar and everything working in there as well. When it is cooled, if you haven't lined your tin, just go around the edge with a palette knife or a knife once it's out the oven, just to unstick it, because as it cools, it'll weld itself to the pan. I do highly recommend lining your pan though for this one. And yeah, that's it. That's our flapjack. So let's have a quick recap then. I'm just sort of looking down my notes thinking, have I got anything else to tell you? No, apart from how easy they are to make. I mean, they are seriously easy, as you've seen. And they're just great. So we've done a raspberry white chocolate flapjack. This recipe is going to make about 10 to 12 portions. And like I say, it depends how big you want to cut it up. They're about a good inch thick as well. So they're going to be a good brownie size. Remember, it's packed full of all that raspberries and white chocolate inside as well. So you get a really good mouthful every bite. And it's rich and it's buttery, and you'll get that really nice, crunchy, crispy golden top and that moist, chewy, soft, middly bit as well. And as we've just been talking, it is super adaptable. You can make this whatever you want it to be, and you can make it gluten-free and you can make it vegan as well. You just need to do a few swaps. And I will put all of that information into the blog post as well, so you've got those alternatives. But whatever you do, if you're doing gluten-free or a vegan version, please remember to check the packaging for just double check in case there's anything that sort of goes against those two dietary things. And it is a great one to get little bakers involved. We do have the hot sugar, butter, syrup mixture, but they can get involved with the stirring. Once you've poured that in and it's in the oats, it cools down really quickly. So they can get stirring and mixing it all in and throwing bits and pieces in. This is a really good, easy one to get them sort of learning how to do things in the kitchen. So that's that. We'll just run quickly down our ingredients again. So we use porridge oats. We use 400 grams of those. And these are just standard supermarket own brand porridge oats. You can use rolled oats. You can use jumbo oats. But if you're using the jumbo oats, you want to just blitz them a little bit. Just pulse them in a food processor first, because they're really big, and otherwise your flapjacks will just fall apart. They won't hold together very well. You'll also need butter. We've used an unsalted butter, 200 grams of that. And you can use a slightly salted if you prefer. I didn't put any salt into this because it's quite sweet, so I didn't want to add anything extra to it. But you can use a pinch of fine sea salt if you prefer to add that in if you're using unsalted butter. Or you can use a slightly salted butter. We've used a soft light brown sugar, and like I was saying, you can switch that for a white caster sugar, a super fine sugar if you prefer. You can use a granulated sugar because we're melting it, but if you do want to use just a regular granulated sugar, make sure it's sort of dissolved into your mixture and you've got no sugar granule crystals in there before you bake it, because otherwise you'll get quite a crumbly texture to your flapjack as it bakes. They won't bind and hold everything together. We've used golden syrup, which is over on the back shelf because it's getting everywhere. If you're in the States, you can use a corn syrup, a light corn syrup instead, or you can use honey. And remember, that's a light, mild, runny honey. We don't want anything manuka or anything like that because it's very expensive, and these are simple and cheap recipes. For our filling, we've used fresh raspberries. I've used frozen ones that have defrosted because I couldn't get hold of any fresh ones today, but you can use fresh or frozen raspberries, and white chocolate chips or chunks or pieces of white chocolate that you've chopped up. Equipment wise then, this works well in an 8-inch cake pan or a brownie pan. I've used a rectangle brownie pan, and I will double check that, but I think it's 11 by 7. And then also a large saucepan to mix everything and melt everything in. Remember, it's good if it's a heavy bottomed, thick based one, because that helps disperse the heat and doesn't catch our butter and sugars and we don't want that to burn. You'll also need a large mixing bowl, or you can do it all in your very large saucepan. And just a few things to stir and pack the flapjack with: a rubber spatula, a decent spoon, an angled palette knife, and also a little bit of baking parchment to line our tray with, our baking pan with. And then 180 degrees C, 350 Fahrenheit for 35 minutes for your baking info. So that's it. I hope you go and give it a try, because it really, really is a really simple recipe. I can't tell you how simple it is. But I will put all the information onto the blog post, all the alternatives, all the substitutions, and I'll let you know when they're live. These guys will just need a photo shoot in the morning, and it should be up in the next couple of days, but I will let you know when it's there. They smell really good. I've just got a whiff of toffee, flapjacky, raspberry, white chocolateness. But that's it. I mean, the recipes will be there. There's loads up there. All the Kitchen Live stuff is going up at the moment, and there is I posted this morning a raspberry and lemon scone, well, however you want to pronounce it, an English tea scone, full of raspberry jam and lemon curd and lashings of clotted cream. And they're a really quick and easy bake as well, and made within about less than 30 minutes actually, in and out of the oven. So within half an hour, you've got your scones. But they've been posted on the blog today, so you can go and find out those as well. In the meantime, though, I want to say, as always, thank you very much for tuning in, whether you're catching us live or if you're on the replay. If you're on the Facebook page, then give me a thumbs up, drop a comment in the comments box, give me a hello. If you're over on the YouTube channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the little notification bell, and then you'll be notified every time I post a new video or I go live. Thank you very much for joining me. Next week, we're back on Wednesday again, and we are going to be doing, I keep pointing the wrong way because I've changed the side of the picture, the circles on. We're going to be doing Millionaire's Rice Krispie treats. So, you know, like a Millionaire shortbread, where you've got that shortbread layer and the caramel layer and the chocolate layer. We're going to be doing that, but we're going to be doing it with Rice Krispies instead. So we have a Rice Krispies caramel and chocolate layer. So again, really quick, really simple, really good recipe, and a good one to do with the kids. So we're in August next week. How on earth are we in August already? We're in August next week, so join in at 8 o'clock next weekend. That's UK time, here on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel, and we'll be making Millionaire's Rice Krispie treats. However, in the meantime, until then, I hope you have a really good rest of the week, and I will see you soon. Have a good one. Bye bye.